Hey guys, I'm the Comics Kid 2099, and I just got back from the X-Men Days of Future Past movie. I'm wearing my dark Wolverine shirt that I got for Christmas, and my thoughts on this movie. I want to be really quick on this. I don't want to take like 20 minutes talking about how I felt. Long story short, this movie is pretty good. It's not the best X-Men movie that we've had. I still think that honor goes to First Class. I think this movie could have been better. A few minor complaints. I guess I'm just going to jump right into things I did not like. Number one, I've said this before. I don't know if I said this on camera or not in my channel, but I still don't like that this movie skipped over 10 years after the events of First Class. I would have much rather this movie been a year after X-Men First Class. I think there is a lot of missed opportunity for story there in that 10-year time period, and they're just kind of glossing over it so that they can do the 1970s. And we've already heard that the movie X-Men Apocalypse, which is coming up next, that it's going to be in the 1980s. So they're going to be skipping roughly another 10 years, and something almost just fell. And I don't like that. I don't like that they're skipping over so much time period that they could be telling really interesting stories in. I've said this before. I really wish that they had done an entire trilogy set in the 1960s, and I think that would have ended up being truly fantastic. As is, we are getting good films, but they're not the best films. And specifically, there's a lot of stuff in this dual timeline thing that just doesn't work for me. And I'm not going to get into a lot of that, but I think the thing that slows this movie down the most for me is that, you see, I guess I should go ahead and explain what happens, but if you're watching this video, you probably already know. Basically, the movie starts in a dark, dystopic future, and the shape-shifting, adaptive Sentinels are killing everybody. Basically, they're killing most of the humans, they're trying to kill all of the mutants, and we have a small group of X-Men who are left, and they've managed to survive this long because Kitty Pryde has this power to send someone's mind back in time into their slightly younger body, and then warn the X-Men, hey, the Sentinels are coming, so then they go somewhere else and hide out. Now, I'll be honest, I have no idea where Kitty Pryde got this power, since she never had this power in any of the movies. And I was telling my dad, I'm not the kind of person who is going to yell and complain, oh, that's different from the comics, so I hate it. No, I just want these movies to be consistent with themselves. And Kitty Pryde never at any point displayed this ability. We are never even told where she got this power. Likewise, we're never told how Professor X was able to survive being killed in X-Men The Last Stand. Now, if you remember a movie from 2006, then you might remember that there was a post-credits scene where we hear his voice and he has put his mind into another body. Okay, that's fine and good. Why is he still in his old body? Why is this new body now crippled if he is in a new body? None of that makes any sense. They didn't even do like a one little line would have been enough for Professor X to just say something like, oh, this body is a clone and my mind doesn't want me to walk because I'm so used to being crippled. Something like that would have been fine. The meat of this movie, about 80% of it takes place in 1973, and like I was going to say earlier, the thing that slows this movie down the most for me is that it keeps jumping back to the future. And it would be fine if we actually had something to say about what was going on in the future. But every time we jump back to the future, all that we see is, oh no, things are looking very grim, the Sentinels are coming. Oh no, things are looking very grim, the Sentinels are coming. Oh no, once again, the Sentinels are coming. We don't really get anything new in any of these scenes. They're basically just there to pad out the movie because the storytellers didn't really have a whole lot to say about what was going on in the 1970s. And I really wish we could have had more stuff going on in the 1970s and a little less of this jumping back to the present day or the future timeline or whatever. We really didn't need that much stuff happening in the future. All we needed was to set up this time travel plot in the future and then have Wolverine's consciousness in the 1970s where he's trying to change the future, and then, spoiler, at the end of the movie you've got a brand new timeline that is much shinier, much happier, much brighter than the Sentinels taking over and all of that nonsense. Other than that, I really enjoyed this movie. I know it sounds like I really did not enjoy it. I'm just kind of trying to do a really quick hitting on the highlights, so to speak. I'm not doing a very in-depth review. I enjoyed this movie. There's some fun, witty dialogue. Quicksilver, probably my favorite part of this movie. Everyone, the entire internet was griping and complaining about how he looks stupid and how he doesn't look anything like the comic book Quicksilver and how Avengers Age of Ultron is going to kick this Quicksilver's butt. This guy was my favorite part of the movie. He was hilarious. He had all the best lines in the movie. I was really disappointed whenever he leaves the movie about 1/3 of the way in, and we really don't see him anymore except for one scene that's like no dialogue, just a very quick shot. I wish he had been part of the group for the rest of the movie. I think that would have been really cool. Admittedly, his style of humor probably would have gotten old after a while, but I found him to be very refreshing. I found him to be very interesting. I wish we could get an X-Men movie where Magneto is not the bad guy. I know that he is the bad guy in the comics. I get that he's a bad person. He's done some bad stuff. But, guys, there's a lot more X-Men villains out there. We don't need to constantly have Magneto going back to being the villain. For example, we've got William Stryker. We've got Bolivar Trask. We've got all these people, Senator Kelly. All these people are kind of villainous. At least some of them are much more villainous than others. And in the movies where Magneto is working with the X-Men, it seems like these guys have tattooed on their chests or something that Magneto must always go back to being a bad guy. For example, X-Men 2, Magneto betrays the X-Men. First Class, Magneto betrays the X-Men. Days of Future Past, Magneto betrays the X-Men. I would love to see a movie where either A, Magneto is not featured at all, and we can have some different villains used, or B, if Magneto has to work with the other X-Men, then he doesn't betray them at all, because he's not always a 100% evil, mustache-twirling supervillain. He is a multifaceted, complex character, and this movie does spotlight the complexity a little bit. He does what he does because he wants mutant kind to survive. Even when he's doing stuff that's kind of seen as being bad, for example, he turns on one of his comrades, who, honestly, I did not see that coming. I thought that was a very interesting scene. He does this stuff to help mutants survive. So he doesn't see himself as being a bad guy, but this goes back to me wishing that we could have had an entire trilogy of movies set in the 1960s. I wish that Magneto could have been a member of the X-Men for a couple of films before doing his face-heel turn. And sadly, that's all moot now because X-Men First Class did something totally different, and now this movie is doing something totally different. I like that old Magneto was basically a good guy, but we didn't get a whole lot with him. In fact, we didn't get a whole lot of any of the future characters. And this is something I was telling somebody online, not on a video, somewhere else. I was saying, my big problem with this movie, I knew going into this movie that Blink, Warpath, Bishop, and Sunspot, I knew that those guys were not going to have a big role in this movie. I knew that they were going to be in it for about 3 minutes, and that was it. And sure enough, I was right. All those guys ever really do in this movie is fight Sentinels. They don't really have any bearing on the plot. My problem with that is that now, if we wanted to see those guys in an actual movie, be actual characters in a movie, we really can't because we've already wasted Sunspot, Bishop, and Blink, and Warpath. Now, I guess, like I said, the movie ends with a new timeline set in place, and it's kind of sort of ignoring some of the stuff that's happened in the previous movies, but at the end of the day, this movie still doesn't fix everything that's wrong with this franchise, and that's something either Bryan Singer or Simon Kinberg, one of them had said that this movie was going to fix all the continuity problems. It doesn't do that. It fixes some of it. It kind of creates a new timeline, but it still doesn't explain why there were glitches in the old timeline, which, whatever, I'm kind of whatever on that. The point is, I guess we could see a different version of Bishop or Warpath or Blink in this new timeline, but I kind of doubt that's going to happen. I kind of think that the only reason those guys were here was because Bryan Singer seems to think that the fans want to see 35 different mutant characters on screen, even though only 4 or 5 of them really have anything to do in this story. And the characters who do have stuff to do in this story are the ones that you would expect. Beast, Mystique, Magneto, Charles Xavier, Wolverine, Quicksilver for a little bit. Honestly, I think this movie would have been a lot better if we cut down the number of rebel fighters in the future, if we had cut down the number of scenes in the future. If we only had 1 or 2 scenes set in the future, I think that would have been a lot better. If we had fleshed out some of the stuff that was going on in the 1970s, I think all of that would have made this movie a lot better. As is, if I had to give this movie a grade, I would say probably it's a B or maybe a B+, somewhere in between B and B+. It's a pretty decent film. It's not my favorite X-Men film. I'm very interested to see what happens next, but at this point, I still get the feeling that all these movie makers are still paying for the sins of X-Men The Last Stand. That movie, I don't hate it as much as everyone else. In fact, I like it quite a bit more than one of the other X-Men movies that we've gotten in the past. I still think that that movie fundamentally broke the X-Men franchise, and ever since then, we have been getting movies that are trying to find a way to continue the X-Men franchise, but they realize they can't really do that because of what happened in X-Men The Last Stand. This movie, we're something like, I don't know, 8 years later, and it's still paying for the sins of that movie. Now, ideally, after this, we're not going to have to worry about what happened in X-Men The Last Stand. And I'm not going to spoil what happens in the new timeline, but I definitely think that this is a movie, if you're an X-Men fan, go and watch this movie. If you're just kind of neutral and lukewarm on the X-Men, maybe give this one a skip. I don't know. I can't see someone who just is like okay with the X-Men. Maybe they go and see the movies if they want to, and then they go and see this movie. I can't really see people doing that. This movie is for hardcore fans, I feel like. I don't think this movie would be nearly as well received for somebody who is just kind of okay with the X-Men. And also, stay through all the credits. All of the credits. There's one post-credit scene. I'm not going to talk about it here, but if you are the kind of person who, when the credits start, you're ready to leave, do yourself a favor, stay through the credits, or maybe go to Wikipedia and just look and see what the post-credit scene is, because it's not something that is really mind breaking or whatever, jaw dropping. If you've been keeping up with the future of the X-Men film franchise and you know what's going to be in store for these movies in the next couple of films, then this post-credit scene probably isn't going to surprise you that much. That's about all I have to say. I hope that you guys go and watch this film. If you do go and watch this film, I hope that you enjoyed the film. Maybe you'll enjoy it more than I did. I hope that you do. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that this is like the greatest movie, and they're foaming at the mouth. I thought it was pretty good. 4 out of 5 stars, maybe B+, something like that. There are some things that I wish they had done differently, but really, it's going to be very fun watching this movie again when it comes out on DVD. So I'm looking forward to that, and I will see you guys tomorrow with a different kind of video. Catch you later.